Last summer, a lot of gamers were rejoicing when this news came out. Microsoft DEI lead blast company an internal email after team is reportedly laid off. Many gamers were rightfully excited with the fact that companies are starting to get rid of a lot of these departments, because it comes to find out it really just makes for bad quality gameplay when the people running it aren't necessarily the most qualified individuals, or they're just the ones who check the most boxes. And the actual gameplay and story of the games themselves are not necessarily made because it'll be what gamers want, but it's because it's pushing a narrative that they actually want. So when this news kind of came out, people were thinking like, okay, are we finally done with this sort of thing and we can get back to making quality content? Well, not necessarily, because there was also this article from last March from Forbes. Are companies quiet quitting DEI? And that's an important distinction here. And it cites several articles where it's talking about how a lot of companies are starting to get rid of their DEI departments and other things like that. But listen to this right here. Despite what these stories suggest, in reality, DEI is growing. According to a new Littler study, more than half of U.S. executives say their organizations have expanded their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies over the past year, despite an increased backlash against broader diversity initiatives. Rather than boldly proclaiming DEI initiatives like in the summer of 2020, the courageous companies that are staying the course are doing it quietly. They're doing it because it's important for them to achieve the results they hope to achieve, not for the accolades and recognition. And that's basically where we get to the subject of today's story. Activision and Blizzard attempt to rebrand diversity, equity, and inclusion to inclusive growth as the public rejects Wokism. Scrolling down into this article from That Park Place, a leaked newsletter from inside Activision and Blizzard reveals that the company is internally rebranding its diversity, equity, and inclusion group to include to inclusive growth in the wake of public rejection of wokeism in nearly all levels of society. So I think it is good that the public is rejecting it, but I do kind of find it troubling that they're just going to try to rebrand it. But ultimately, I don't think this is going to be for the benefit of these companies, but I'll get more on that in a little bit. Let's continue on with this. Former World of Warcraft team lead Mark Kearns, aka Grumps, shared the newsletter from Activision's new head of inclusive growth, Casey Morris. Morris wrote, "We have some new news to share. Going forward, we'll be changing the name of our group from DE&I, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, to Inclusive Growth to represent the dynamic and strategic work our team is doing to bring inclusion and equity to our people, candidate and game development, and creative process across the business." The email goes on to say that they're still very much in support of DEI, and this is pretty much just a restructuring and a rebranding of it. But I can't think of a reason why they would want to rebrand it like this outside of the fact that they're trying to cover it up what they're actually doing at the company, because they seem to think gamers are rejecting studios that have DEI departments at it, which, yes, that's true, but that's not necessarily the only reason why. People don't necessarily care about diversity or other things like that in games. They care about quality content. And when there's companies like this who are just having specific departments for that, it just goes to show the people working at the company aren't necessarily the best qualified. They're just the ones who check the right boxes. And then when it comes to actual gameplay and stories of games, it's just the ones that push their agenda. It's not necessarily what the gamers actually want. Grums commented, Activision and Blizzard rebranded DEI as companies flee the label and downplay DEI and ESG. The terms are now deemed toxic to their political agenda, but nothing has changed. They are just trying to hide it now. This rebrand comes in the wake of a number of major corporations completely ditching their DEI departments, including Tractor Supply, John Deere, Harley Davidson, and Jack Daniels, following pressure from their customers led by Robbie Starbuck. And I think that is a good thing that people have openly rejected what they're pushing and they're trying to hide it now, and that they're actually on the defense. I don't think this is ultimately going to work for them, though, because it's like I was saying, it's not necessarily that gamers are rejecting it just because it has that department at these companies. They're rejecting it because those departments are basically just an indicator that the quality of the game is not going to be very good. It's similar to how, I don't know, certain games and movies, there's telltale signs before the release of it that it's not going to be very good. And audiences just can kind of intuitively pick up on that over time. And then they learn like, okay, well, a movie coming out of this studio is going to be crap, or a game made by this developer is also going to be bad. And this is just more of the same. They're trying to shift it right now and say it's not DEI, so maybe people can avoid it. But the fact of the matter is, when people actually get out there and play these games, they're not going to like it. So they're just going to learn to avoid certain studios as a result of this. They don't have to know necessarily that it's DEI, but they'll just feel that there's something wrong with the game or it's just not up to quality. And then you also got places like Sweet Baby Inc. detected over on Steam, a group that has 426,000 followers right now. And this came about some months ago when Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League came about. So that's where it first started, because Sweet Baby Inc. is outside consulting to a lot of these game studios where they'll basically try to have them insert DEI and other stuff like that into it. So now it's become toxic to have Sweet Baby Inc. involved with your game, especially when you have a Steam page like this, basically pointing out whenever they're involved with the game. They have right here, featured on Sweet Baby Inc. website, featured on their website, yada, yada, yada. And then it's kind of evolved past this to a point where now it's just, you don't have to necessarily be involved with Sweet Baby Inc. to be on this page. This is a page that's kind of just detecting games that are putting DEI and other stuff like that first and foremost, whether it's actually Sweet Baby Inc. specifically or just some other outside company that's doing the same thing. If it's being pushed in a game like this, if they're just trying to put politics ahead of quality gameplay and storytelling, well, then this is calling it out. And then also if it's completely free of that sort of thing and it's actually rejecting that sort of thing, well, then it'll give it a recommendation on here. So these type of groups will still be around and it'll still kind of alert gamers to in advance to some of these games that are actually trying to push this sort of agenda. And then there's just, like I said, the audience will just kind of intuitively pick up on certain studios are no longer going to be worth playing if they're going to be trying to push this stuff. So by them actually trying to avoid the label and change it and make it something else, they're just kind of in a losing strategy right now, because they're just always going to be constantly on the defense. And eventually people are going to get wind to, for Activision and Blizzard, what did they say there was? Again, inclusive growth. So if you see a company with inclusive growth department, well, then that means it's a red flag that you should probably avoid that, or whatever they're going to call the new DEI department at whatever studio it is. The fact of the matter is it's toxic for these companies whenever they start pushing this stuff, because if it wasn't, then they wouldn't be trying to avoid the label of it. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below, because I think this is actually a good sign for gamers and people who just enjoy quality entertainment, because it indicates that the pendulum is swinging back the other way. Gone are the days when they can be out and about and say like, well, this is what we're standing for as a company. If you don't like it, then just don't play it, because we've found that that doesn't work for them anymore. So now they're going to try to quietly win people back. But if they're still going to try to push this same agenda, then I don't think it's going to work for them at all. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And if you can, click that like button, share the video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.